Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop In CEO. And as always, I am grateful that you've dropped in for another episode where week after week, I hope to provide the most amazing insights for you, regardless of where you're at in your career, but ultimately so you can navigate your challenges and opportunities with confidence. And so, yeah, this is a solo episode. I'm in a season of solos because, I just really wanted to connect with you and share some of my insights. And even though I know it's a one-way conversation, I'm hoping that you are actively listening wherever you're at and thinking about some of the insights I share with you and maybe taking action. But ultimately, I am here for you. Again, I don't want you to struggle so much in your career. I am here to support you, whether it's virtually or perhaps someday you and I can actually meet. But what I'd like to do is just kind of break the ice a little bit. I do that sometimes. I don't just go right into the topic, but I assure you, this week's topic is going to be very relevant to many of you. But I think starting out with keeping up with the Coviellos might be a good icebreaker this week. You hear me talk about my family a bit every once in a while, but I think maybe just giving you some updates about what's going on in our lives may be of interest to you. Maybe some of these experiences will resonate with you. So, if you've been watching me on YouTube, maybe you've been noticing a slight change. Again, I still show up with the same voice, the same insights, but physically I'm changing a little bit. And I am pleased to say, and I hopefully I've got more great news in the future. I'm not losing any weight. Yes, is that something to be proud of? Well, I'm not losing any more weight. But what I will tell you is that I have now completed 37 fit body boot camp classes for which I've gone down a clothing size. And again, I'm not losing any weight. But I honestly believe I am potentially replacing some of those extra years of padding with lean muscle, all in pursuit of having an amazing curling season. And if you're new to getting to know me, I'm an amateur curler. I curl 6 months out of the year, sometimes seven, where I get to throw stones, yell at people, and sweep hard on ice. Yeah, it's an interesting sport. More on that. If you want to learn more about curling, go to the cincinnati curlingclub.org and you'll get to learn more about this amazing sport. But maybe we should talk sometime. Maybe you'll be interested. But aligned with that, you occasionally hear me talk about my husband, Dan. Well, Dan has been in construction management all of his life, starting out as a painting and decorating contractor, making a shift into Anderson Windows. Now he works for a major company as a senior project manager. And well, we couldn't put those skills to waste. No. Our curling club, which is a three-sheet or three-lane club with a small warm room where we gather, is now expanding. We are going to be a four-sheet club with an expanded warm room for socializing for the 2025-2026 season, just in time for the Olympic cycle. And yeah, he's been at the curling club every single weekend so that we can enjoy sharing the sport with our members and the greater Cincinnati community. So yeah, if you're in the Ohio area, if you're near Cincinnati, again, shameless plug for the curling club. There is curling in Ohio and specifically Cincinnati. So check out the Cincinnati Curling Club. Real quick, I've got three adult children. My daughter, Sarah, is starting her second year in a graduate program in architecture. She can't stand school. She just wants to get out there and earn money. But all the same, we get to have her at home and enjoy her a few more years before she's off. Middle son David, he's going to have a wedding ceremony. He's been married to Jesse for quite some time, for about the last year or so, but we're finally going to have a wonderful ceremony in North Carolina where we'll bring the families together and celebrate. And then finally, my son Dan and his wife Camille, yeah, they're globetrotters. They currently live in Zurich, Switzerland, and guess where they're going to wind up next? Yes, the Netherlands. Of course, a wonderful place to visit. And so that's just a little bit of keeping up with the Coviellos. If any of this is interesting, you just want to talk about your families. It's all the same. We have lives outside of our careers and our profession, and we need to celebrate community and family, and let's celebrate ourselves. But the reason why I'm here today is, again, I want to support you. I want you to navigate your challenges with confidence. And this week's topic actually was part of a presentation that I was so grateful to have had the opportunity to participate in was Ivy Exec. And we came up with a topic called How to Navigate Challenging Conversations with Confidence. And if anybody out there has said, not me, this isn't for me, I beg to differ. Everybody at some point has had to navigate a challenging conversation, whether it's in your career or maybe a community member or maybe somebody near and dear. And so I just want to be able to, in a few short minutes, be able to kind of talk about why is this even a problem? Because again, unless you get to the root cause of why is this even a problem, you can't even begin to take action and change your behavior or how you approach these situations. So we're going to share with you a little bit about, again, how to navigate challenging conversations with confidence. And just in full transparency, I've been there, done that. I feel your pain. I have had to climb the corporate client. I have climbed the corporate ladder to avoid conflict at all costs. So, in my self defense of not wanting to have challenging conversations, I became an amazing consensus builder. Again, I figured out a way to navigate conversations to make sure everybody is on the same page and avoid having conflict. So I'll tell you, I had a hard time trying to develop these skills, but it's because I have developed some of these skills and a framework that if this is you or somebody that you actually know is having a hard time with difficult conversations, I'm going to be providing you a solution. But we're going to talk about some things that I think will kind of set the framework or set the stage for what we're going to talk about. Again, why are challenging conversations so challenging? And quite honestly, the systems are not set up to teach you those skills. I'll be giving you a framework for what we're going to do and a couple scenarios to kind of explain how I've had to apply this. And if any of this resonates with you and you can go do it yourself, have at it. I hope that what we share today is going to be very relevant to your situation. And so I think one of the things that makes challenging conversations so challenging is that you sincerely care about relationships. You care about the outcome of the conversation. You care about your reputation. You don't want to be hurt. And there is such a strong emotional reaction to conflict that if you've never had a framework, you just avoid it at all costs. Again, the only reason why challenging conversations are challenging is because you're a human being. You care, and maybe you lack the framework to be able to move forward. And so, to add to that, if you haven't already developed the skills or had anybody to model those behaviors, honestly, the systems and the ecosystems, unless you have an amazing mentor or somebody to model their behavior, the systems are not set up to teach you those skills. So, again, unless you have a coach or mentor, by the way, shameless plug, please get a coach or a mentor to help you navigate scenarios. I mean, that's one of the things I've been talking about. Don't go at this alone. And honestly, the corporate environment, again, I praise the corporate environment. I have a student of that environment for over 30 years. I still navigate within it. There's a lot of great things in working in corporations that have all the resources and advantages of being in large organizations. They're tremendous proving ground to learn your skill, develop your skill, rise in leadership. But honestly, they are focused on getting results and not focused on your essential skill development, unless you have a great coach or a mentor or somebody's behavior to model. And when they do provide you skills development, it's often in response to a bad situation and really not part of proactive development. Again, they're in the business of making money and serving their stakeholders. And honestly, they're not in the business to really care about your development. Now, mind you, there are human resource professionals that are there to help you. You have courses to help you. You may even have been put into an identified person as a high performer, and you get all of these resources. But for the vast majority of you, they may not exist, the corporation or the ecosystem to develop these skills. So here, if nothing else, this is where you want to pause and replay this section over and over again, because I'm going to let you have it. I'm going to be giving you the framework for challenging conversations. Now, I didn't Google this. I didn't use Chat GPT. I actually had to kind of think about this step by step. What's the framework? And it's not rocket science. But what I'm going to do is give you the steps, and then we're going to talk about it. So, the framework for challenging conversations is one, establishing common ground. Next, determine the gap. Then, agree to the gap. Then, identify one action you can take to close that gap. The other person agrees to take one action to close the gap. And then reframe that by closing these mutual gaps, it supports the common ground. And so I'll repeat a little bit. Liz, I'm going to take a drink because I got a cough. Establishing common ground. So, what that means is the fact that, we're here for a greater purpose. One could all agree that we're here to establish, a strategy to be able to serve our customers so they don't have any quality issues and they get their product on time. That's establishing common ground. And then determining the gap. Where is it that you see a difference where you're not meeting expectation? And again, using language that is positive, that doesn't impart any conflict. Again, language is really important. And once you discuss the gap, you agree on the gap. You hope that the other person sees it. Yes, there is a gap in our expectations or our ability to deliver. And then when I talk about identifying one actions, again, you're bringing this up. You're the one that initiated this challenging conversation and you want to get to resolution. You go first by saying, well, listen, given this particular gap, I can do this. And then you look at the body language and the other person agrees. And then you kind of steer it in the other direction. If I do this, is there an action that you can take that will further close this gap or bring us closer to that common ground? And once again, once you have that give and take, it is great to reframe that because we have had this conversation and in support of the common beliefs or common ground, we're going to take a step, both of us, in the direction such that we can move through this conflict. And then it no longer becomes a conflict. It is simply identifying a gap and moving forward. Now, this sounds simple. Okay, gosh, Deb, if it was that easy, we should be doing this a long time ago. But, we really haven't given you maybe a couple examples to be able to apply this. And so I do want to just, before I give you a couple examples on how to apply this, give you some words because I said language is important. And if there's anybody out there where English is not their first language, again, you may have further struggles because maybe in your culture or how words translate, you may not pick the right choice of words. But the choice of words, even though they may be similar, is so important into assuring we maintain relationships. Now, we may not like the people that we're having the challenges with, but at least we can get to a place of potentially respect. Okay? There is a difference. Respect enables us to move forward through challenges in the workplace. So, a few words you might want to consider again, maybe write these down or take note of it as you approach these situations. Words like, I care, I believe, I understand, I propose, thank you for your time. We need to move forward. It is important for us. We share common. This has been a challenging time. So there's a lot of empathy and caring in this, but at the essence, we're all humans. We all want to be cared for. Our feelings don't want to be hurt. We want to be understood. We want to move forward. So the choice of words in your exchanges is very important. So I may give you just two examples just to hit home. And I'm actually going to start with a family example because everybody's got some form of family for which there's been a conflict at one time or another. And again, sometimes you'll hear me talk about my mother. I love my mother dearly, but we're of two different generations of mindsets when it comes to just doing different things. And my mother, as I perceive it, holds on to a lot of things. She saves everything, never throws everything out. Her home is neat, but there are piles and piles of things that she saves. And it really bothered me. And, I'd had conflict with her and I'd say, well, what about this and what about that? Let's throw this out, try to be helpful. But I think it caused more harm than anything. And I decided to have a challenging or critical conversation with her one day. And I said, Mom, I love you. I just want to understand. Help me to understand when I walk into your home that you have so many things. You save everything. You don't throw anything away. Why is that? And she said, I don't know. And I wasn't expecting that answer, but she said, I don't know why I hold on to things. And I said, on to that, that was pretty valid. She doesn't know why she holds on to things. But as we explored a little bit further, because it wasn't that she came from the Depression era or any major hardship, but there were a couple events that stood out in her life that made me understand maybe why she holds on to things. And this one I'd never known about, but when she was a young girl, she had a couple dolls. And in her family, her aunt had adopted a young girl as well. And the girl came from humble beginnings, didn't have that many things. And they came to visit. And as the story goes, my mother had two dolls, and they asked her to give one of the dolls to this cousin. And onto itself, it seemed like a nice thing to do. But this was something, a possession of my mother's that she cared about. And being asked to give it away to somebody who was a stranger, who knows what emotional conflict that she had. So anything that is her own, one could really understand that she just wants to hold on to it. That's her area of comfort or her control. And there's other stories along the way where maybe there was some scarcity for which then when she came into something, she cherished it. Like she cherishes memories. And so anything that possibly represents a memory, an envelope, a card, a brochure, something she holds on to. And so who are we to argue with that? So long story short, once I understood that and the gap in perception, I said, well, listen, when I do come into your home, what would be helpful as we look at the different piles one by one? What is it that maybe you do want to discard? What is it that maybe you want to give away? What is it that maybe you want to donate? And she says, that would be very helpful because she knew she had too much. So that's just one example where, for the greater good, so she doesn't have a lot of clutter. And I told her, and I don't want to have to deal with this someday. Let's do this together. And so we move through that challenge. But a business situation, and we're going to bring it home real soon. This one really had a grave impact on me. As you recall, I've been the head of quality and food safety at an organization, and I had a situation where there was an urgent issue, and there was a VP of operations that I needed. I needed them to be along with me, even bring the hammer down on the plants. And when they didn't do this, I got very frustrated. I said, why am I doing this all alone? These are his plants. And so I had the conversation with him. I said, help me to understand in this highly stressful situation. Do you agree it's urgent? They said, yes, it is urgent. So we established common ground. And then I said, well, what I would have expected is as I put out these communications, you would have jumped on and reinforced with the plant managers. And I said, help me to understand that this is a gap. And when they explained that, where they came from another region, so this is not their native region, they came from another region. I said, in that region, the issues that were escalated by the quality team were not as urgent. And it was more that he was an informed position versus consulted or asking to be responsible. And in those cases, the quality leader just took care of it all and simply informed him. So there was no need for him to act. So once I understood the gap, I said, well, okay, in this region, these things are a little bit more critical and urgent. I said, I'll continue to write these communications and work with the leaders to impress upon them how urgent this issue is. I said, but can I count on you if I maybe write this for you? Would you be able to send it out and support what is so urgent and important? They said, absolutely. So in that process, we took each an action to be able to move forward past the gap. And so, had I not taken the time to ask the question to help me to understand why they saw the situation a certain way or behaved in a certain way, I would continue to have had that frustration and built up more negative feelings. Now that I had the courage and a framework to have that conversation, there was nothing negative. There was actually discovery. I had a new level of understanding about this individual, but others would not have taken the time. And so that was the one of the greatest learnings for me, for which I'm grateful that I'm sharing these insights with you. So I want you to now think about the framework that I've provided you to establish common ground, agree to the gap, find actions to be able to move past the gap, and then reframe in the context of what's the greater good that we're trying to accomplish. And, you know, as I think about this, it might sound easy, but what's going to happen when this podcast episode is done? Do you have somebody that maybe you can role play this with the next time that you might have to have one of these challenging conversations? And then I'd also like you to ask yourself, because if this is still kind of painful, is the pain significant enough that trying something different might yield a different outcome? Is that something that maybe you'd like to see? And finally, if you actually go through with this, what would it feel like to master a new skill? And so there's so much to be gained by thinking about a different framework to manage challenging conversations with confidence. And I hope that some of these insights and stories that I've shared with you have been helpful. Now, I really care about supporting you. And while I am not per se a life coach, I think developing these essential skills is so important to live your life to the fullest. And so I'm here for you. Deb Coviello, the Drop In CEO. I'm here to help you navigate your challenges with confidence. And if you stayed on this long, I have a free gift for you. I'd love for you to go visit my website, dropinceo.com/gift, GIFT. You'll get the first chapter of my book, The CEO's Compass, Your Guide to Get Back on Track, both in PDF form as well as just a little audio snippet. The first chapter of my book is so, so important when I think about you out there having some of these challenges. And by the way, if you like my podcast, I also have a free podcast bundle for you to download as well. And so, Deb Coviello, the Drop In CEO, thank you again for dropping in on the episode. I'm grateful that you were here. I know it was a little bit long, but there was just so much I wanted to share with you because I truly care about you navigating your challenges and opportunities with confidence. And until next time, I wish you well and continue success. Take care.